Welcome, everybody, to making ClickHouse safe for AI using OAuth and Altinity builds. So it's my pleasure to be here today talking about OAuth. And my name is Robert Hodges. I'm CEO of Altinity. I have with me today Andrey Zvonov, who is the person who implemented our support for OAuth, which we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes. Before we dive into it, I want to just share a couple of housekeeping things. This call is being recorded, so if you signed up for it, you will get a recording sent to you an email along with the slides. You do not have to take frantic notes. And we have contact information at the end as well. We are happy to answer questions about this. Let me just go in, and in case you have not heard of Altinity before, we are a vendor for ClickHouse. We have run a cloud uh, for ClickHouse since 2020. Deeply experienced in cloud operation of uh, of ClickHouse. We're the authors of the Altinity operator or Kubernetes operator for ClickHouse that many of you on this call are already using. We also do enterprise support. That's actually how the company started. So 24/7 support, people running business critical systems, everything from hey, is this what I'm designing here? Does this make sense to you? All the way to help, my system is down. It's shedding parts and it won't start. Please get me back online again. So that's the other part of our business. We are not the same as ClickHouse Incorporated. Our lawyers, or actually everybody's lawyers, like it when I make that clear. We do compete, but because this is open source, we also collaborate in many ways. And Altinity over the years has made many contributions directly to ClickHouse. It's now up into it's not 1,000 PRs, but it's not far short of it. And then, of course, we do a lot of work in ecosystem projects of various kinds, like the Kubernetes operator, like ClickHouse Backup, so on and so forth. That's all the marketing fluff that we're going to do. Let's just dive in and talk about OAuth. So I'm going to start assuming that people don't necessarily have a deep understanding of OAuth. So we'll do kind of a level set of what's actually there, and then we'll dig into the details with a couple demos and lots of discussion of the innards. So what do we mean when we say OAuth? We use that term kind of loosely, and but in this talk, when we use the word OAuth, what we're talking about is a scheme for access to ClickHouse using tokens. And the way it works is that it actually combines two standards which rest on additional standards below them, but they are, first of all, OAuth 2, which is short for Open Authorization 2.0. It's a standard for authorizing access to online services. It's the thing when you, for example, if you install an extension in Chrome, it'll ask you, hey, are you okay with this guy being able to see your calendar? Stuff like that. So authorizing access to features of an online service. The second thing that is built on is called OIDC, which is short for Open ID Connect. This is a standard for authenticating access to to online services. In other words, saying who you are. So it's what you can do and who are you. These are the two standards that work together. They kind of overlap, and as you'll see, that makes them sometimes a little bit confusing, but as a whole, it works pretty well, and it's widely used. And in fact, when we're looking at the benefits, why do people use token-based authentication and authorization? There are a number of them, of which here are three big ones. One is it allows single sign-on. So you may have a whole plethora of services that you need to access, of which ClickHouse would be one. And you can control it from a single, what we call identity provider, for example, Google Auth. This is really important if you're in a large corporation. We have customers, for example, that are trading on markets, financial markets, and in some cases they allow their traders direct access to ClickHouse information. as well as information from other systems. So being able to control this centrally, define each user, define their rights very carefully, and also be able to revoke them or even remove those users from the systems at will is really important. OAuth enables this. Second, it's widely supported. The proof of that is what I just said. You see it constantly when you're using web systems, asking you, hey, are you okay doing this? Or please go sign on to Google to show that that you're a person we really trust. So so it is the standard for the prevailing standard for doing this. And finally, it just completely eliminates password management for users, at least uh, up to a certain point. So traditionally with ClickHouse, you're using things, you might be using LDAP, but typically we're all using login and password. That's the most common form of authentication. And you end up, if you have good hygiene, you'll put them in one password, but in fact, you end up with a bunch of these lying around uh, on the file system, potentially sources of compromise. This just eliminates all of that housekeeping. So those are some good things about OAuth. Of course, things don't come for free and there's always trade-offs. One of the things you'll see in this talk is OAuth is a complicated, it's not just one standard, but it's a family of standards that work together. And it can be tricky to set up. You'll see just the operation and diagnosing problems can be difficult. The second thing is that open source ClickHouse doesn't support it fully. And particularly the OIDC, being able to have native support to connect to an IDP, get yourself authenticated and log in, that wasn't available in open source until a few months ago. And what we have done, and the reason we're doing this this webinar, is we've been working with a number of our customers, and the Altinity Antalya builds, which are our technology builds where we put all our recent innovation on ClickHouse. They now support OIDC plus OAuth 2. So this is now available, and you can actually use this stuff, and it's completely open source. So you don't have to talk to us. You can just go grab the builds, set it up, and use it. And in fact, specifically, what you'll want to do is use an Altinity Antalya version 25.816 or higher. It's not supported in our Altinity stable builds for the time being. We're still kind of sort of deciding when this stuff is going to drop in there, working with customers on that, because the Altinity stable builds put a very high premium on compatibility with upstream ClickHouse, as well as being very, very reliable. So, and it's particularly that first one, the compatibility with upstream ClickHouse, that we're concerned about. So it's not supported in Altinity stable for now, but Antalya has it. And in fact, all the build examples we're showing you today are using Antalya. And these are the location of the builds. Antalya has a bunch of other great features. It's where all our data lake support is available. We have Swarm clusters, which will do separation of storage and compute. You've probably heard about those. Those also come in those builds. So that's kind of basic background on this. And I'm going to turn this over now to Andrey to give you a demo and talk about the implementation. And one thing I want to say is we do have time for questions. If, as we go into this talk, you see things that you want to know more about, please go ahead and feel free to drop a question in the question and answer box or put them in the chat. We'll get to them during the talk if they're relevant. Otherwise, we'll queue them up at the end. So, Andrey, I'm going to stop my share and switch over to you. So go for it. I'll let you know when I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I hope you can see my screen now.
Looks great. Take it away.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to show a small demo. I have this local setup where I have a local instance of Grafana, local instance of ClickHouse, and local instance of Keycloak. If you don't know what a Keycloak is, to keep it simple, it's an identity provider like Google, but you can keep it local and it's fully configurable and reproducible. That's why I'm showing it. So what I'm going to show. First of all, I almost haven't configured ClickHouse. Like I haven't set up users manually, etc. The only thing I set up is this token authentication flow. So let's see how it works with Grafana. So when I want to sign in Grafana, I click on sign in with Keycloak. Here I enter my credentials. And okay, this is the thing you probably do dozens of times every day. Log in through Google. But now we haven't yet connected the ClickHouse. So let's connect the ClickHouse to the Grafana as a data source. We'll do it using the Altinity plugin for Grafana. Let me just enter some details. This all runs in Docker, obviously, so that's why the URL is ClickHouse. And all we have to do to use OAuth with ClickHouse is toggle this trigger that's called forward OAuth identity. What it will do, it will make Grafana forward the tokens it got from identity provider all the way to ClickHouse. Let's see if it works. And it says that we work. It is working. So let's somehow prove it. The most obvious way to prove it is to check our current username. So let's see. So yeah, you see current user, and you see that the username is actually the email of my demo user that I only set up in Keycloak. I repeat, we haven't set up any users in ClickHouse itself. But that's only authentication. What about authorization? Because OpenID Connect and all this flow we call OAuth, it also supports authorization. Like if you know ClickHouse, then you know that if you just create a user, if you do not specify any grants, any permissions, it will not be able to do basically anything. But now you see that I can list some tables. I can even read data from these tables. That's the second beauty. I haven't set up any rights for my user. I just set up some mapping. I will talk about it later. And the user that was implicitly created based on the information from the identity provider, it was also granted some permissions. So that was the short demo. And now let's explain what you have just seen. I hope you still see me and hear me, Robert. Is that correct?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so let's continue. There are three types of tokens in all this flow. They're called ID token, access token, and refresh token. What we are using here, what ClickHouse is working with, is access token. So ID token is a token that just contains some user information. Refresh token is a token that we use to get a new access token. And the access token is, or it's sometimes called bearer token, is the token we use in all this. Access tokens usually live for a very short period, and that's why you need a refresh token that usually lives for a longer period. And ClickHouse, in our case, ClickHouse uses access token to extract user information from the identity provider and to give some grants to the user. So some more details. What you just saw, we clicked on this sign with Keycloak button, and Grafana went to the identity provider, to Keycloak, as you saw. We authenticated there, and we were directed back from Keycloak to Grafana with some secret code. And this was the authentication, the outsourced, let's say, authentication. So Grafana didn't bother to check if we are who we really are. Grafana outsourced this to Keycloak, and it got a token confirming, and Grafana will work with this token. So this is the same in more details. So Grafana obtained the token. We are logged into Grafana. Grafana has a token, and when we write some request in Grafana, like select user, or we are reading from some table, Grafana works over HTTP, so it connects to ClickHouse over HTTP, and it adds this token it got as a header to the HTTP request that goes into ClickHouse. And ClickHouse doesn't know anything about your Grafana user, about anything. It just takes this token, and the token in general is nothing meaningful. It's a sequence of some letters. To extract something useful from this token, ClickHouse goes back to the identity provider, to the keycloak, and keycloak returns some usable information, such as username, etc. If or when the token is expired, Grafana manages this automatically. It uses the refresh token it has to get a new access token, and you will never have queries to ClickHouse with an old token. Grafana will manage that. Grafana will substitute a new token. So let's finally talk about how to configure it. And the configuration is quite simple, but first of all, I would like to explain some entities we have. First of all, we have a token processor. It's not a standalone entity. It's a component of ClickHouse, but this is the entity that knows how to talk to the identity provider. So how it works, like ClickHouse obtains the token from Grafana or directly from a user via ClickHouse client, etc. And the token processor is an inner object that knows how to talk to your exact identity provider because you have configured it. And this token processor exchanges the token for some meaningful information. One thing that is required to have is the username. So it is enough for us to set up a user in ClickHouse, right? Username is all what we need. Optionally, if configured properly, token processor will also get a list of groups from the identity provider that the user belongs to. You know these groups in Google, in Azure, they are basically the same entity. So we got a username, and we have two options, whether this user exists locally or it doesn't. So for example, it can be defined in users.xml. In this case, we will try to do only the authentication. We will take this user, check if the user is allowed to be authenticated using a token. If it is allowed to be authenticated, then the process is finished. But the most interesting case is when we do not have this locally defined users, and this is the case that I showed you before. Then, again, if configured properly, we can use the token and the identity provider in general as a source of truth about user definition. So you do not have this user in ClickHouse, but you trust the IDP, you trust the token enough to assume that maybe this user exists. ClickHouse implicitly creates a user with the username extracted from the token. And here is when we need those groups. As I mentioned, if you just create a user in ClickHouse, it will have no rights at all. And these groups we got may be or may not be mapped to ClickHouse roles. So you can define a rule how these groups will be mapped onto roles.
It looks like your slides might not be advancing. I just see slide 15.
Maybe I just forgot to advance it.
Oh, there you are. Okay, great. You're on. Thanks. Just wanted to make sure we're on the right side. Sorry.
But basically, this slide and the previous slide are always the same. Maybe this one is a bit more. This one represents a bit more generic image. So where was I? I was talking about the roles. So the user was created, and if we got some groups and there are some corresponding roles in ClickHouse, this user will be granted those roles. And then, like normally, the original query will be processed. So the request with the token is incoming, then there goes this token processing magic. User is created or existing user is taken, and the query is executed as this user executed it. Yeah, some more configuration details. First entity is the token processor I mentioned, and it is a configurable module, let's say, but it's nothing more of a box that just knows how to take a token and return you some information you can read, username, maybe email, maybe something like that, what you requested, and it knows how to talk to the provider. The most interesting part is the user directory. So you can set it up. As I mentioned before, you can set ClickHouse to make ClickHouse trust the information from token and treat it as a source of user definition. So from line 12 and below, you can see how it is configured. You define a processor for each user directory, token-based user directory. You define a processor, only one processor that will be used for communication with identity provider. Also, maybe you would like to grant some role or some roles to all users coming from this OAuth. Then you can define a common roles section, and this role will be granted to all the users, even if they do not belong to any groups on the IDP. And it is also a common case that groups in the provider have some symbols you do not like, or some symbols that are not good for naming roles, or maybe some unsupported symbols. And for that reason, we have this roles transform parameter that will take the group name, transform it according to this rule. It's a regular expression, and the result will be matched again against existing roles. So one more useful thing is session log. You can use it to track which users were created, which users accessed the database, etc. And some of the best practices for OAuth, and some of them are very generic. First of all, you have to keep your access token short-lived, because if this token is leaked, someone will be able to access services on your behalf. But if you make it expire every second, it will also be a bad decision, because for every query that goes to ClickHouse, ClickHouse will have to communicate with the identity provider, which is not working, which is long. What else? And of course, also be wary of granting right access to AI agents, especially, but it's kind of a generic thing. You need to be careful about it in these times. And I think that's it. Robert, you can take it back.
Great. If you want to end your share, I will
Yeah.
bring mine.
I hope someone understood something from my speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to take this share back and continue. Andrey, can you just confirm you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, let's continue the show. I want to talk about more directly about AI, since we build this as a talk for making ClickHouse safe for AI. And I'm going to motivate this. I'm going to talk about a project that we have under development right now, which is an Altinity MCP server. So what is an MCP server? Well, it's a fundamental way that it's a very popular way for AI applications to connect to any kind of service. and it stands for Model Context Protocol. So it's a standard that just basically provides sort of agent readable descriptions of tools and resources that allow connections to things like databases, development tools, cool stuff like GitHub, so on and so forth. So it's very popular. There's many MCP servers. If you have an agent, you can probably write one in about 20 minutes, to do random things. So we have one that we're developing right now. It's called Altinity MCP. It's written in Golang. It's under development. We will be discussing it in May. And there is a webinar that I'd like to invite you to right now that will talk about this on May 20th. We'll show you the connection information shortly. But this will have this has a number of tools, of which one is execute query. And that's just a mechanism for the agent to go ahead and issue queries to ClickHouse. So I could show you boring pictures about how it's wired together. But first, I'd like to show you a demo because then the pictures will seem less boring. So let me just escape out of this and let's go talk to my favorite agent right now, which is Claude. So I have a connection to this MCP server. We've got it set up in Altinity.cloud. And here we have OTel MCP, and it says that it needs authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and let Claude kick off authentication. And in this case, we're going to do what's called browser-based login. And the idea here is that the Claude client doesn't communicate directly with the IDP because it actually doesn't know where it is, and it doesn't have like the built-in mechanism to talk to it the way that we saw with Grafana, because this thing is not a web service. So let me go ahead and take this kind of complicated URL and make this a little bit smaller, and let's go ahead and post this inside my browser. And I think if you use TUIs, you've probably seen this before. It's going to go ahead and now it authenticated. That looked pretty easy. There's actually kind of an amazing set of steps that happen to make this authentication work. But to make a long story short, that MCP server now has a token that actually a set of tokens that it can use to communicate with ClickHouse. So let's prove that. Here we are. Authentication was successful. So let's just go ahead and ask my database login name. So let's see what it finds out. And I'm kind of paranoid. I always make Claude tell me exactly what it's going to do because I'm sort of a micromanager. Here we go. So my database login, and it says our Hodges, but it shows my email. That's basically how it recognizes me. And if we go in and look at at the session log, we'd see our Hodges at altinity.com. So you might say, oh my God, it just leaked my email to all of you, but there's no problem because it's all over GitHub thanks to developer certificates of origin. At this point, I'm logged in and I have a bunch of read-only privileges. So I can use this. This MCP server does not allow me to write to the database. So let's see. I can ask it questions. What kind of information is in ClickHouse? Let's have it go out and take a look. It is able to read system tables, so it can figure out what the tables are. And yeah, there you go. You can see that it's running show databases. And we'll get a little bit of information. Yeah, system.tables, kind of the things that you would expect if you were going around and hunting and pecking. So it has a bunch of information, and it has accurately said, hey, this looks like Claude API telemetry. And now let's just demonstrate that I have through OAuth, I also have the ability to read the tables. So make me a report general of a daily token usage. So I can just ask this. And if you've used MCP servers before or skills in Claude, this will look pretty familiar. But the key thing here is that we didn't have to worry about providing any credentials because since it's all done by OAuth, actually any tool that I use that's connecting to ClickHouse, as long as it can be configured to handle OAuth, we're going to be in good shape and be able to use them to talk to ClickHouse. So this will get us a report in a moment. We'll give it like 1 minute and see if it can come up with something. As you can see, Claude is sometimes pretty slow. So there we go. Okay, we got a nice report. So yeah, and this shows the day and how much information, sort of daily aggregates, which it just pulled automatically. These numbers are roughly correct. And although the one thing that when I ran this as a demo that I got kind of a shock is this number of $630 a day. That's a lot of money. It turns out that it is the inferred cost, but we're on subscription, so it's actually a lot less than that. But we are using AI very actively. So that's a demo. We're happily logged in. We can disconnect at any time, but it's OAuth that makes this possible. So let me talk a little bit about how this was done, because it's another interesting example of how wiring works on OAuth. And so the Altinity MCP server has a couple different modes. Uh, One is called forward mode, which works pretty similarly to what we just saw in with Grafana, where we have a session token to the MCP server, and then it goes ahead and it forwards the tokens that it gets out to ClickHouse. And so I'm not going to go too deeply into that, and that's why it's not a very good diagram. What's more interesting is we have something called gating mode. And in this case, we're actually going to not use a token to log into ClickHouse. The MCP server, in fact, is going to handle all the authentication and authorization, and then it's going to use a static login and password, which is just stored inside the server or inside the MCP server. So let me just show you the wiring on this because it's kind of interesting. And what happened when I was setting up this demo is I'm kind of a geek, so I've always wondered how that, when you paste that URL, into your browser to authenticate using OAuth, what's actually happening. Well, here's what's happening in this particular case, and it's pretty similar for most other providers. So we're running Claude, and we say, okay, we want to authenticate. What does Claude do? Well, it goes and calls the MCP server, and it gets a URL base that it can then use to build an authorization URL that we showed on the screen. We then, as a user, copy it to the web browser if the browser doesn't pop up automatically, which it doesn't on Linux. And then there's a number of steps, and it's actually really fun to watch this because basically what it does is it first of all goes to the MCP server. The MCP server forwards it to the identity provider. You sign in, and then it gets forwarded back to the Altinity MCP. And then finally, there's a final forward where the Altinity MCP is going to forward it back to, tell your browser to forward back to the Claude client, which has a port conveniently open so it can receive the last call, and that's how it gets its code back. Kind of complicated, but it actually works, and it's amazingly fast. This is the mechanics that are generally used when we have this login-based authorization. So, and then when you actually, with this gating mode, it's very simple. Then when we actually talk to Claude, we have an MCP session token that was granted to us in that long-winded process we went through. We just hand that over along with our query. It gets passed into the Altinity MCP server into the tool for running queries, and then what the MCP server does is it just substitutes in a login and a password. It takes care of all the, if we need to, talk to the identity provider to do any validation, that's all taken care of inside the MCP. So it's very simple. So these are two ways that this illustrates then a second way that ClickHouse can be accessed through OAuth. In this case, we've basically got the MCP server serving as a proxy for logins, but you're still once you're in the database, it's you have the right whatever rights are granted to you by that fixed account. Okay, so I'm not going to say more about the MCP server. It is in active development right now. We'll have it out in May. What I would like to talk about is just our general roadmap for OAuth. So there's a bunch of stuff that's happened already. This was as of Q4 2025, that is to say 2 quarters ago, we uh, specifically Andrey had Keycloak working, Azure Active Directory. This has now been renamed to Microsoft Entra ID. That was working. Grafana plugin, we had to certify it. The plugin basically, a lot of the behavior is in the Grafana server itself. The plugins don't really need to know very much because because of the way the forwarding mechanisms work that we just saw. We have a lot of other stuff on tap. I think the most interesting one is ClickHouse Client in the next Antalya build, which may be going out right as we speak, will have login authorization, the thing that we just saw on the MCP server. So you will be able to say minus login, and as long as you have the correct configuration in your client, it will go find the ID. It'll generate a URL and you can paste it in and talk to your IDP just as we did with the MCP server. So that's coming out. There's a couple of PR fixes on top of it, but I think that'll be stable very shortly. It'll certainly be usable as of this evening. We're also adapting. We have a Tableau JDBC connector. We're adapting that to do token-based authorization, so OIDC and OAuth. We will be certifying the ClickHouse Connect Python driver, and we will be adding UI support for all of this in Altinity.cloud. So, for example, being able to, right now you can configure the OAuth support, but you actually have to put the configuration files in yourself. It's not very hard to do, but it's kind of persnickety. So we'll be adding more support for that so that it's more of a checkbox. And in fact, speaking of developing things, this is something where we're looking for people to collaborate with us. Everything that we've done and that we've shown you today is licensed under Apache 2.0. We don't hold back anything on ClickHouse. We think that our principle is the building blocks that you're using for analytics should be open and openly licensed so that you can use them anywhere you want, whether you have a relationship with us or not. I will say that many of these features have been developed as joint investments with customers. And so if you have things that you are interested in, we tend to go do things that people really want. And having a design partner who, helps us with that is really critical to getting this right. So if you see other ways that OIDC and OAuth 2 can help you, and you see features that are missing, come talk to us. We're happy to queue something up to get it done. They will appear in the Antalya builds. Right now, they wouldn't get pushed to upstream, and we'll talk about that in a bit in the question and answer. Where to learn more? So, well, one thing I should say is that for OAuth in particular, it turns out that AI agent or development coding agents like Claude and Codex are pretty well informed about how OAuth works. In fact, more informed than most humans are. So they can often help you figure things out in the configuration as long as the information is available somewhere that they've trained on. Like, for example, Keycloak seems to be fairly well known, so agents understand that. They can often help you with configuration and help you figure out problems. Right now, you can go to this project that's shown here, OAuth examples, which shows all the example code for the setups that Andrey was working, and we're working on full documentation. It will be out shortly. So these are ways that you can find out more about these features and how to use them. So that's it. like to thank you all. We're here to answer questions if you'd like to queue them up. Um, the and then I'd like to invite you to come to our webinar on May 20th. It's called AI Toys in the Attic, where we will be rolling out our some of our features that we've been working with AI. We use it very intensively at Altinity, but there's a bunch of things we've been collecting in the background, and we're now ready to start pushing some of them out and sharing what we've been doing. I will say that one of the places where AI has been incredibly helpful in this process and OAuth is we use it a lot for looking for security holes. There's our QA team was one of the first adopters in the company of coding agents, and this has turned out to be a very effective way to review code and particularly look for gaps. If you're not using it, I highly recommend implementing that. And if you come to the webinar, we'll talk a little bit about what we do there. So with that, we're done. If you have questions, feel free to line them up in the chat. Question for you. Actually, there is one question, Andrey. Can you just talk a little bit about the difference between what we've done and what's available in upstream? Because I think that's a question that's in some people's minds right now.
Yeah, sure. But the first thing that comes to mind is that what we've done is completely open source. You can take a look at it, you can explore it, you can find some bugs maybe, and you can contribute by adding your own IDP that we don't have a support yet for, like GitHub or GitLab or something like that. I cannot be 100% sure while talking about what is the difference because obviously I haven't seen the implementation by the ClickHouse thing because it's a closed sourced one. But from what is exposed outside, I can tell that they are only focused on providers that are working with JWT tokens. While many providers work with JWT tokens, they issue them, issuing JWT tokens. Not all of them are doing that. For example, Google, GitHub, they do not issue JWT tokens. And from what I understand, the upstream implementation will not work with them. But again, I will not share my guesses anymore because I haven't seen the code.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think that there will be. I think there's sort of this is one place where the upstream approach does diverge from what we're doing. Whether they'll converge at some point, we don't know. In the meantime, let us know what you'd like to see. We're delighted to put it in. Let me see. I actually don't see too many other questions. We'll hang around for a minute or two if you have other things. Otherwise, feel free to join our Slack channel. You can also contact us on LinkedIn. I'm Robert Hodges. If you have questions, I'll probably send some LinkedIn connection requests out after this talk to see if you have information that you'd like to follow up on. But I do hope you've enjoyed this presentation. As I said, the slides and the recording will be coming to a mailbox near you within the next few hours. So please do come back and talk to us. Try this stuff out. We'd love to get your feedback and love to get your ideas for making it better. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody, and I think we'll call it good for today. And thanks again, Andrey. Great having you as a presenter.
Yeah, thank you for inviting.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.